Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all and peace out to the rest of you. Y'all know what to do. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So yeah, been busy since landing in my old city. And oh God, I know, sorry, I'm for yawning in your ear. I'm going to do that some more before this is over with. Bruh, man is tired. And it's been quite a busy set of days here. Busy few days in a row. I mean, I've been doing a good bit of traveling. I traveled from my new city to my old city, visit my wife and my girlfriend. Both of them picked me up from the airport at the same time. Uh, that was one of the better times in my life. Um, those of you who know. So I don't want any new audience members trying to preach any sermons to me. I know what the rules are and I follow them. My girlfriend is my wife. So, but the others of you already know. My longer standing subscribers and audience members. Yeah, so that being said, we're now down to our last night of Ramadan tonight. Tomorrow is the last day of Ramadan, and then at sunset, it's over. And then Wednesday morning for us is going to be Eid al-Fitr. And, Assalamu alaikum. And so, and right now, as things are going on, there's an eclipse that is currently going across the Gulf Coast of the U.S. And up into the non-coastal South. It has already begun to be partially visible, or the partial eclipse is not visible in the Northeast. So, a relative of mine living there sent to me a photograph of the sun partially blocked, taken through some eclipse glasses. And so, with that being said, it gives it certainly an atmosphere of strangeness, I know, to the States. And I've been hearing that there are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around that you guys have to hear about all the time. But seems like they're just conspiracy theories, which I would have expected. I think people have to be on guard mostly because Americans are going to be victims of the few that don't know how to act whenever anything out of the ordinary occurs. But with that being said, things got strange even beforehand. I want to start with Tia Mowry. It is not strange that Tia Mowry, there's nothing strange about her wanting to go back to Corey Hardrict. There's nothing strange about her experiences since leaving him, talking about I graduated from the marriage. And, there's nothing strange about what's actually going on that we know about. What is strange is that we hear that she wants to go back and is actually admitting this. So yeah, we would not have expected her to say this. Now, I don't know what the truth is. I don't know how to prove that that's actually what she wants to do and that it's not just some kind of rumor. I'm really not sure, but it's been repeated enough. And if, in fact, this is true, this is strange to us. That we found out that she wants to go back to Corey Hardrict, we found out she wants to go and reunite with the same husband from whom she just graduated because she lived long enough. This gentleman tells us something. We've had some other women sit up there and say, well, I regret that I left him and I really shouldn't have. And I thought this, that, and the other. And what this means is that Tia Mowry has been listening to the Black manosphere. She's at least aware of the talking points. She knows about Kevin Samuels. And she decided that she was going to do the usual sister girl thing of leave the brother. And then decided that, oh, wait, it's not worth it. These men know what the hell I did. and they're not going to stick around, and they're not going to validate me and give me everything I'm looking for. And oh no, this is what it's like out here in these streets. And dang it, I better go ahead and get back with him. That's what the hell happened. And she heard the talking points as well. She heard the videos about these other women. Someone pulled her coat and told her, hey, look, sis, you didn't graduate to nothing, but what AC calls pound tizzy. You didn't graduate to nothing but some fornication. These men are not going to take you seriously. Let me explain this to you. As a man that actually likes women, seasoned, if you will, mature, in shape, but near my age, I would say, I would not take her seriously because she was willing to bust up a family, and it had nothing to do with being abused or cheating. And not only that, but when people were sitting up here speculating, she did not specifically come out and say he did not cheat. I simply got bored. That's what it came down to. That's what it all came down to in the end. She didn't even say to the speculators, no, that man ain't cheat. No, that man ain't do this. No, that man ain't do none of that. I just got bored. I decided I wanted some new pain. I wanted to be for the streets. I didn't want to actually have to be a full-time mom and wife. I needed some new ding-a-ling. Didn't really act like I needed it when I was single. I would have dared do that then because I was young and I was better looking and I was nice and I was fine and I was young. Did I mention I was young? Because see, remember, even though I'm not into that, gentlemen, most of y'all are. And that's the reason why young chicks act the way they do. How do you know? I'm one of those guys that likes them older. And they have acted quite childish with me when they've realized this. They don't act more mature. And they have actually negated one of the main things I would have looked for in a seasoned woman. Mature women are very rare, and I have a rough time locating them. That's a difficult thing. Now, the one time that I did, I have to admit, the government got in the way. Last time that I did, I must say that I have noticed maturity, but the maturity that I've noticed goes up and down. Then again, I am the older spouse in the marriage, so I understand that. But for the most part, and to find the maturity that I did find, both times I had to leave the West. And that's what it's going to be again and again and again. For most of us, you like them aged, mature. Guess what? They're losing maturity because you like them. And Tia began to realize what was out there. She began to realize that. It ain't what she thought. Ain't never gonna be what she thought. But remember that it's not the experience she had that is strange. Remember that it is her coming back that is strange. The fact that she didn't hide it. Sisters used to never admit this when they wanted to go back to someone, especially a good guy like Corey. Oh, they admit they would admit that they wanted a no good knuckle dragging N-word back. But an upright brother that actually showed romance and romantic interest in them when they were courting, oh God, no. That wasn't what they were about. So, that's the thing about it. That's what we have to really be aware of and take notice. The openness of this reaction is what tells us everything. And so now what we have to realize, now we have a situation where women that are older are coming around, but that's still not good enough for our young men. Not at all. Aoki Simmons she's a problem. If you don't give me money, I'm gonna get a sugar daddy. But then it turns out that she was actually on some sugar baby trip with somebody. Now, to say this to a dad, I would have taken as a joke if I hadn't seen the footage of her on a trip with somebody. And that's an issue. Now, What you want is a scenario, gentlemen, where what you've been doing, since it's already paying off, at least to the point where Tia is now setting a different precedent. It's not to say that she's what's important, but you've done what you've done so well that a nice looking celebrity, while she's still nice to look at, is willing to at least kind of admit a mistake. What we want, though, is a situation where when chicks are young, they know they can't do this stuff. When they're young, they're more careful. And where also we want one where Tia has to know that it's not enough to simply say, let's work it out. She has to come in and say, damn, I was wrong. I'm sorry, and I'm lucky if you take me back, and I'm asking for that, knowing damn well I don't deserve it. And we don't know how the conversation is really going to go between her and Cordy, but we need a culture wherein every man comes up socialized, knowing to do that. See, we men already know you treat a good woman well. We already understand that part. If she's good to you, be good to her. Okay, see, we don't need to really get into that much. Problem is, the issue is that it's not really talked about on the flip side, which is that we need to make this very plain that we need men to know from the time they're little boys. If a broad leaves you, you don't just take her back because she asked for it. If she leaves you, you take her back with a price, if you're going to take her back at all, and that's not really what's preferable. That's what needs to be understood. Needs to be taught to these men while they're young, these boys while they're young. And that leads me to my next point. Soft guy era, soft man era. That's necessary. We need that. Even though it's a joke, and it's a way that these men are holding up the mirror to these chicks talking about their soft girl era, which is really stupid anyway, because if you're still calling yourself a girl, you're saying to yourself you're not mature enough. Because if men call ourselves boys, the first thing women would do would be to latch on to that. Oh, he said he's a boy. He said it himself. He's not mature enough. He's not a man. He can't handle a woman. So when they say soft girl era, that's one of the things we latch on to. Okay, so you still a kid. We don't F kids. But the soft guy era, the soft man era, though it is a set of jokes designed to hold up the mirror, needs to be taken seriously, actually. Remember, gentlemen, those of you that are joking about the soft guy era, and I appreciate you doing so, must remember, gentlemen, you making these videos, I'm telling you guys, this is not a patriarchy we live in. Now, to the Wyatt fella that made that video, hats off to you too, electronic handshake, because what you're doing was actually pretty good. But understand that even your community is kind of a patriarchy, but not as much as it used to be. The patriarchy in your community is declining. We never had one. So to the black men that are making these soft guy era videos, keep this in mind. You have every right to be dead serious about what you're saying, because it's not a patriarchy. We don't live in one. And these matriarchs of our community, these ma'ams, these hyenas, have all kinds of crap to talk non-stop. They never stop about what they deserve and what they're owed and why they're owed that much and why they should get everything they want without even making an effort. And they never stop. It's never over when they get to talking about what they deserve and what they're entitled to. But then when it comes to a job, you never get them to admit that they should be paid less so that they can more easily find men that make more, because that's how the math goes. Can't get them to admit that by their own logic, they should make less for the same work. I mean, for one, they're not going to do the same work anyway, even for the same position, but that they should, and even for the same pay. So they therefore should be paid less. Not because I say so, but because they say so, because they demand that. You have every right to say what you're saying and be dead serious. No, they need to prove that they can do for you what you can do for them. They're bragging about what they can provide, but then they refuse to ever provide it. Outright refuse. They because they're women, they will not provide, but they want you to factor in what they can provide. No, you have every right to turn around and be dead serious and to say to them, listen, you're going to dish out this money. If I have to dish out some for this, you're going to dish out some for that. That's what it is. Financially speaking, we're like roommates. We split this stuff 50-50. Housework? No. You do more than that. Here's the reason why. Because statistics have already shown that you all don't like men that do housework. And if you do any housework, you do it when they don't see it. You never do it when they're in front of them. And what that might mean is that you have to get off work early in order to get some of that housework done. Because, again, it's not that housework is wrong for men to do. The issue is that women simply can't stay with men that they can't respect, and they can't respect men they see doing housework. Studies have shown this. I mean, hell, we already know the women get upset when they see images of men smiling. You ask some of them, they'll tell you that gives them the ick. It bothers them. You know, what are you doing not being miserable? Assalamu alaikum.
كيف حالك؟
الحمد لله شلونك؟
بخير؟
الحمد لله
الله يبارك فيك.
الحمد لله.
الله يعافيك.
هل سمعت عن العيد بكره او بعد بكره؟ العيد
ان شاء الله تعالى.
بكره او بعد بكره؟
بكره ان شاء الله.
اوكي بكره. سمعت انها بكره على العيد؟ اوكي شكرا جزيلا على الاخبار. السلام عليكم سير.
طيب تكمل الشهر صح؟
اوكي بكره على نهايه الشهر رمضان.
اي نعم.
اوكي فعيد انه بعد بكره. اوكي شكرا للاخبار. السلام عليكم sir. All right, sorry about that. I was double checking. I actually don't know him. He just greeted me, and I asked him, "Listen, man, did you hear about the Eid? Was it tomorrow or the day after?" I was really just asking to see if everybody's on one accord, but I think he had a bit of a stutter. So in any case, you got every right to be dead serious about this. Every right to be dead behind, dead A55. Dead ass, man, dead ass. I'm telling you, folk, you're going to do this 50-50. You got every right, gentlemen, because, look, at the end of the day, you're being asked for too much. And you're being asked like I said, you are being told standards as if you are of a negative value because you're a guy. And that is a very cold and insulting way for them to view you. And so you're being told this. And the whole time that you're being told this, no one has the decency to come and tell you that there's no reason that you deserve to be treated that way. There's no reason that you deserve to have to do so much extra in exchange for nothing, in exchange for so little. No one wants to admit that that is filthy, foul, funky. But this is the deal you've been given. Here I am in a place where that's not how it goes anymore, at least not overall. And I found out too that in some of the urban centers here, big population centers here, they know what simp is. They even have the term whore. The plural, they pluralize it differently, hawar. And I first heard this and I didn't know what it was. But the dude said the singular is whore. And he said it's not an English word. And I said, oh, you talking about the English word? Oh, okay, that's meaning loose women. So, and then they have this word simp. Now, simp is an adjective, so I don't think they have a plural for it. They don't use it as a noun. They use it as if it's an adjective. Are you simp? Stuff like that. But, man, even in these major urban centers, they have some idea. And I'm not going to sit up and tell you that feminism is not going to spread here. It is. It's already spreading. But by the same token, right off the bat, the resistance to it is here. The resistance to it, the pushback, is right here, right now, at the same time as feminism. And to them, they're not making any distinction. If you are against the patriarchy in this country, they're going to say you're a feminist. You could be for women's rights, but you know what? They'll tell you, look, here, women have rights. Only a few jobs they're not allowed to work. Being a judge is one of them. They'll tell you, the king has already given rights. They can drive now as one. They can leave without a male guardian. They can leave the country without a male guardian, do God knows what, and then come waltz right back in like ain't nothing happened. So since certain rights are already in place that were not here when I got here, these men here will sit up and say, you push for anything else, unless it's already in the Quran, but it's not in the law of the land. You push for anything else, we're pushing back. You're against men. These men are not playing around. I get that to them. These men will sit up and tell you, man, I love my sister, but I find out she's a feminist. I ain't gonna have no sisters. Some of them are saying this. Some of them are even looking at the preferences that women have. There are women here that prefer to marry a man that doesn't have a bunch of sisters, because they'll call him at different times asking for his help. Like, take me here, take me there, pay this for me. And he's got a wife to look after. And a lot of women will say, I'm not doing that. I don't need a whole bunch of sisters-in-law, because then I won't have that much of a husband. But when they were younger, they didn't mind burdening their brothers and their dads. What this means is they're looking at each other like competition. And there are men that are looking at these preferences and they're saying, you know what? We don't respect your preference. So you want a man that ain't got a bunch of sisters? You need to be by yourself, just for your preference. So we're not dealing with this kind of situation here. We're not facing a scenario where feminism it's just going and advancing unchecked. I don't think it's good enough, the pushback, but there is one. So you go ahead, because you're probably going to have the support of knowledgeable men, even in other parts of the world, when you sit up and you make it very clear to the world that you were saying this, but you were dead serious because of what was said to you previously. You have every right to turn around and say, no, we serious. Not because we're trying to oppress them, but in order to be fair. They said 50-50. They said equality, and they didn't even mean it. So these folks ain't playing. And if you get to where you ain't playing, you say that and you're dead serious, you're gonna have some dudes here that are gonna say, yeah, man, you're right. Because quiet as it's kept, men here, when you get ready to marry someone from their family, a sister or a daughter, the funny thing is that men here do want you to treat them well when she behaves well, but they don't want you letting her walk all over you. That's not even what they're looking for. They're not looking for you to be a pushover so you can marry their daughter. They'll tell you, I looked after her, I took care of her. I may have spoiled her a little bit, but that doesn't mean I want you to just let her run over you either. Put you in a hospital having heart attacks and stuff like that, because if she gets you to die from a heart attack, she's gonna be back under this roof with me. And I'm getting old. And my sons, her brothers, are gonna have their own wives and their own lives. So it's actually not in our best interest that you rip and run and get yourself sick and having all kind of heart attacks and strokes trying to make her happy. It's not even in our best interest in the long run. When they really stop and think about it, they want you to treat her well, but not to be a pushover. So they would actually support something like this. You're fighting back. And while feminism went too mother cuss word far in North America, it also means that you get to lead the pushback against it. And while some men might be inclined to say, well, you American men, you British men, you Canadian men don't know what you're doing, that's how I went so far, you have the right to say, no, our dads didn't know. And you can even point to men my age and say, no, those ninjas didn't know, and they're learning. We learned from jump. We do know, because we were born into this, and we're not going to let this continue anymore. It stops with us. We do know how to fight it, and we're going to share that information with you. You're in that position. You in the age group, same age group as these guys that were putting out these videos. No, what shoes you want, what shirts you want. What you do is you take them games they played and you flip them. Because the feminist, the materialist, the misandrist wants you to have a world where there's no place you can go and you don't have to face this BS called feminism and misandry and runaway materialism and an unfair level of hypergamy. They want there to be no place on the planet you can land without facing exactly the same thing they're offering you in the West. And you tolerate it in exchange for a funky crotch when you can get it. That's why Lion MGTOW calls it the musty axe wound. Because they don't want it to smell good. They think you don't deserve that either. So yeah, I'm telling you, gentlemen, you go ahead and you lead that. You in that particular age group are in that position to say, no. Generation X didn't, they just started learning how to fight it, and the boomers were a bunch of no good simps. Never fought it, and that's how we got it. We inherited it from them. To a certain extent, you inherited it even from us, Generation X's. We got it from the boomers, truth be told. My dad had to learn, and he did learn. I never forget when I was in 7th or 8th grade, and there was certain levels, certain types of crap I wasn't willing to tolerate from the girls in my middle school. Now, I can look back and say there were things I did that were goofy because I was a kid, not because I was a goofball, because of just what guys didn't know. I wasn't worse than other dudes, but there were certain things I wasn't willing to tolerate, and my dad didn't know that these things were real. And one day he walked in and said, "Do you even like girls?" I said, "Sure. In general. There's no individual one at my school that I like." "Why not?" I said, "Because they're nasty, Dad. So are the girls." That's what my dad said. Years later, my pops is like, "No, you ain't got to do nothing you be ashamed of." He was one of the first to have to back off of that message, that I'm supposed to just constantly be chasing after them. When I got ready to go to college, my dad said to me, "Listen, you got to watch out for dudes that don't seem to be interested in women." And I said, "Well, Pop, I get it. They don't have any interest at all. But what about the ones who just leave them alone because the women don't like them?" My dad said they should be trying twice as hard, and he had to back up off that too. Even he had to learn. He was a good dad. I'm not saying any of this to knock him. I'm saying this to say that this was the idea that was given to him. And they passed that down to us. And we had that, and then we had the older Generation X's that were making these simp love songs in the 90s. Ralph Tresvant hopping up and from one side of the stage to the other singing about sensitivity. And Ralph Tresvant didn't know. I'm not even blaming him. Bobby Brown singing about some tenderoni right after he had to make that song, "Don't Be Cruel." What? I think they were the same album. And then later on, even coming up into the 2000s, remember the New Edition with Bobby Brown came back together once more to make that song, "Still in Love with You." Remember that? Still in, and you notice, to me, it sounded like a farewell song to the 90s, or maybe to the 80s, because I'm kind of in love with the 80s to a certain extent. I mean, I'm in love with the end of the 80s, the last years of my childhood. But that's also because when you look back at your memories nostalgically, it's never raining. But you're in a position to look at these guys abroad and say to them, no, we inherited a real mess. What we inherited is where y'all are headed, so we do know what to do. And we didn't have the benefit of a whole lot of elders telling us. We only had a few. I'll be an elder in a few years, I guess. BGS was willing to tell us. Shout out to him, I appreciate that. So you're actually in a position, you young cats are in a position. Once you understand it, you get this red pill awareness, you're in a position to tell other men, "Hey man, look, this is what they bringing down the pike." Now y'all can, if you have another resistance of your own, that's great. If you don't, You know what? We'll tell you what we're able to do that works. But first, you need to know that what they're going to bring to you is what they already brought to us. We were born into the situation they want to turn your situation into. You're in a position to tell the men in Malaysia, to tell the men in Indonesia, to tell the men in Brunei, to tell the men even in India, where certain laws are even worse, to tell the men, hell, in big cities in Bangladesh, to tell the men of Afghanistan even. Oh yeah, you didn't think so? Oh yeah. You're in a position to tell those men in where I live, in North Africa. Oh, you think, bruh, in Algeria, you got women that say that if a man don't beat his wife, he don't love her. You got nice looking women that'll say stuff like that. Since I've talked enough about that, I'm going to say one more thing about one more thing, and I'm going to go because I'm catching up since I've been gone for a few days. And I'm still in my old city my wife lives in right now. So it might be a few more days. But last thing I wanted to tell you was that I know that there are going to be some women from Asia that are going to have some stuff to say to Black American women. And I'm going to tell y'all, now, one thing I'm going to say to Southeast Asian women, I only got one gripe with y'all. One only. When you all are interviewed, and this is a gripe that other Black men, African and African American men, don't have. I do. And that is that when you were interviewed and you were asked if you would prefer a white foreigner or a Black foreigner, many of you will say white. I don't think that's just a preference. I think that is some self-hatred. Women who know how to behave, women who are as generally kind and as loving as you, should not hate yourselves. And if you prefer the colonizer over another colonized, I don't see that as just a preference. I don't see it that way. A lot of brothers do because they're looking at your rights. I'm looking at your first right, which is your right to not be oppressed. And y'all know damn well when you're sitting up and looking in these microphones and looking in these cameras and saying that if you have a choice, you'll pick a Wyatt. You know damn well that one will oppress you more likely than the other. You think about it, that's one of the reasons why the Wyatt guys will go there when they're old and wrinkly. And brothers will go there when they're young and middle-aged or old. That's one of the reasons. Brothers will give you a pass. I'm not. I'm looking and saying, why? See, I've been around these non-Black folks. Ain't nothing special about them. They're not even thinking about actually giving as much as they're asking in exchange, except the younger ones because of what their women have done to them. I don't get it. But by the same token, too, since I don't believe in self-hatred, you do have a right to verbally fight back when Black American women start calling y'all kind of dusty feet, this, that, and the other. Notice one thing, though. The one thing that them American sisters ain't said about y'all is that y'all prefer Wyatts. At least you say so on camera when you're asked. And I wonder if that has to do more with the elders, the elder women, your mothers and their friends. Because you don't act like you actually prefer them when foreigners go into your nations and you get choices and options. You don't seem to act like you really prefer the Wyatts over the Bruhs. You just... Anyway, you do have the right to fight back, and I'm not going to be in a position to defend Black women this time. I've done it before. I've defended Black women when Arab men have sat up and said, well, you know, Black women are good for fun, but why don't you marry a white woman? I've defended Black women and said, how about you get up out of my face? Because they're not talking about Black Western women. They're talking about Black women. And they will say that Black women have better attitudes and aren't as arrogant and disgusting and mean as the women of their own race, if you want to call them a race. They will say this, then turn around and say, well, you know, Black women for fun, but marry a white woman. I'm like, no. No, to me, your women suck. Tell them to floss. Tell them to brush their tongue. They're not mean, but tell them to do these things. Your culture's backwards. Tell them to raise sons that don't cheat on every goddamn test you put in front of them every single time they have an exam. Tell them to raise sons that will speak the truth, even when it's against themselves academically. You know what? I cheated because I'm a rat bastard that's lazy and doesn't like to study and don't know how to. You know what? I'm an idiot that thinks that the world is flat because if you tell me some crazy conspiracy theory, I'll shut up and listen and soak it in. But if you start speaking with logic, then I keep cutting you off and interrupting you. So therefore, I'm an idiot. So I believe dumb conspiracy theories like this. You know, why don't you raise, white women ain't raising sons like this. That's the thing I've got to sit up and say to them sometimes. So I've defended black women when it came to that. But see, this is the fight that black women picked, going after Southeast Asian women. This is the fight that black women picked in the West, at least. Maybe not the ones on the continent, but the ones in the West. Now, I would advise you to not call them monkeys. I would advise you to avoid that. But outside of that, we don't have a leg to stand on to defend them. Dennis Sperling said this a while back. Black Western women started this fight. Go ahead and finish it. And while they're sitting up here making comments that aren't necessarily true about your economies and your own personal situations and educational levels, you won't have to actually go after them for anything that is genetic that they could not control. You don't have to go after them for that. You actually are able to go after them for the things they do control. Don't call them monkeys, but what you can say is, if you're not a monkey, why do you think you are? If I can see that you're not, why do you believe it when your worst enemy says that you're a monkey? The same ones that colonized us and we finally kicked them out. They tell you you're a monkey and you believe it. What's that about? Who's really uneducated? The one that knows her own species or the one that thinks that her species is a species she's not? Why is it we don't go looking for the men with the worst criminal records and saying that they're the only ones that are good enough to have their own children? And you're doing exactly that. Why are you breeding? Why are you trying to limit reproduction to exactly what an 1800 slave master would want instead of what's best for your people? And we're not doing that if we're so uneducated. Why is it we could tell you off in our language, our neighbor's language, and your own, and you, when you speak English correctly, you still pretend like you don't? See, these are ways you can really get on them and roast them. And another thing, don't brag about being spicy. Don't do that. What that does is that gives him ammunition. You don't want to do that per se. And to tell the truth, all you really got to say is, where your man? Oh, that's right, you don't have one. And your would-be man, well, you sent him over here. Keep acting the fool, you're sending them over here. They're showing up in our airports, at our parents' houses, asking for our hands in marriage, with directions written on them. She sent me. Keep on, you're recommending us to these men, and we're ready for them. But yeah, you fight back. Those of us black men that are in the know don't have a leg to stand on to try to defend them. Don't say anything the Ku Klux Klan would say. Outside of that, there's no way we could defend them. We know they started it. They know they started it. And even some of these brothers that are trying to defend them know that they started it. And how do we know? They've been doing it since the 90s. I'm not going to lie. Since the 90s, the first ones that ever heard make fun of the Vietnamese that lived around us were sisters, and then later on, brothers who were raised by sisters and no dads. I'm not saying they didn't know their dads, they just didn't live with them. They were the ones who did this. Some brothers would make jokes about everybody, and they really were just jokes, and they would say, I'm really just playing. I don't have anything against you. And you can roast me back, and somebody else could say, all right, with your fried chicken, watermelon eating self, and it really was jokes. But I can't sit up here and say black men even started this trend of going in on other non-white groups like this. We've been wrong when we perpetuated it at times, but I can't say we started it. And so with that being said, I think I'm going long enough, 40 minutes. Hope I caught up well enough. So that being said, it's late here. I got to go ahead and turn in. We got last day of fasting tomorrow. As you all heard me say to that gentleman that I passed up walking. So got one more day of it. Thank you all for listening as always. And as always, black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it. And black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Oh, and by the way, shouts out to Abdullah bin Bobby. Assalamu alaikum, brother. He got on the app, and I think y'all need to hit that up too. The link to it is in my About section to join the Passport Bros app or the website. Y'all should get in. It's getting better and it's getting faster now. I admit it's getting noticeably faster. And I want to thank those of you that have joined me on Buy Me a Coffee and subscribe to me through the Passport Bros app. And I want to thank my supporter, Anonymous, for his support through Odyssey. Thank you all for flying on Jet Black Airways with me. What a phrase, Jet Black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.